you last week it was going to be my honor to present this chapter this week. It's chapter 2 of I'm Practicing the Buddhist Teachings from Teachings for Victory, Volume 2 by Daisaku Ikeda. We've got a lot happen this week. I'm a little low on energy, but I'll do my best. As usual, I'm sure I'll get more as I go along. All right, so starting on page 19. And is everybody, the cameras are on?
Yep.
I'll just start reading. Okay, starting from page 19, reading from the Gosho. The passage for study in this lecture. I insist that this is wrong, Nichiren says, from on practicing the Buddhist teachings. I insist that this is wrong. The most important thing in practicing the Buddhist teachings is to follow and uphold the Buddha's golden words, not the opinions of others. The Buddha himself concluded that one's practice accords with the Buddhist teachings only when one bases one's faith firmly on the standard of these sutra passages, believing fully that there is only the law of the one vehicle. Anyone who practices Buddhism should first understand the two types of practice, shoju and shakabuku. All the sutras and treatises fall into one or the other of these two categories. Though scholars in this country may have studied Buddhism extensively, they do not know which practice accords with the time. The 2 millennia of the former and the middle day of the law required the spread of the Hinayana and provisional Mahayana teachings, but the first 500 years of the latter day call only for the Lotus Sutra, the pure and perfect teaching of the one vehicle of Buddhahood, to be spread abroad widely. As predicted by the Buddha, now is the age of quarrels and disputes, when the pure law becomes obscured and lost, and the provisional and true teachings are hopelessly confused. When one must face enemies, one needs a sword, a stick, or a bow and arrows. When one has no enemies, however, such weapons are of no use at all. In this age, the provisional teachings have turned into enemies of the true teaching. When the time is right to propagate the teaching of the one vehicle, the provisional teachings become enemies. When they are a source of confusion, they must be thoroughly refuted from the standpoint of the true teaching. Of the two types of practice, this is shakabuku, the practice of the Lotus Sutra. With good reason, Tentai stated, the Lotus Sutra is the teaching of shakabuku, the refutation of the provisional doctrines. The 4 peaceful practices in the Peaceful Practices chapter correspond to shoju. To carry them out in this age would be as foolish as sowing seeds in the winter and expecting to reap the harvest in spring. It is natural for a rooster to crow at dawn, but strange for him to crow at dusk. Now, when the true and provisional teachings are utterly confused, it would be equally unnatural for one to seclude oneself in the mountain forests and carry out the peaceful practices of shoju without refuting the enemies of the Lotus Sutra. One would lose the chance to practice the Lotus Sutra. Lecture, page 21. Toward the end of January 1952, before I was born, at a kickoff for the now famous February campaign, I called out to my fellow Kamakura chapter members with whom I shared a profound connection. Let's celebrate the month of Mr. Toda's birth with a brilliant victory. February is the month in which Nichiren Daishonin was born, and the month of second Soka Gakkai President Josei Toda's birth as well. We can practice Nichiren Buddhism today because the Daishonin appeared in the latter day and propagated the mystic law for the enlightenment of all people. And we can practice correctly as SGI members because Mr. Toda courageously embarked on the solitary struggle to rebuild the Soka Gakkai after World War II and make Kosen Rufu a reality, carrying on the vision of his mentor Tnesaburo Makaguchi, who died in prison for his beliefs. Thus, we threw ourselves into the February campaign of 1952 with deep appreciation and the desire to repay our gratitude to these great leaders and teachers of Kosen Rufu. Kosen Rufu, or the widespread propagation of the law, is the practice of Buddhas, arising out of the profound compassion Buddhas have for all living beings. And it is also the practice of bodhisattvas undertaken by disciples who make this compassionate spirit of Buddhism their own. The true power for spreading the mystic law is born when all of us, as practitioners, directly connect our lives to the correct teacher of the law and the true mentors of Kosen Rufu. Now, everybody understands what he just said there? Mm-hmm. What did he just say? How did he make that qualification? Why did he put that little paragraph in there? Is that boilerplate, or is that a specific comment? Let me read it again and see if you get out of it what I get out of it. The true power, okay, so note that he's qualifying it, the real power, the absolute power for spreading the mystic law, for creating Kosen Rufu, the true power for creating Kosen Rufu begins when all of us as practitioners, all of us, each individual, not just the leaders, directly connect our lives to the correct teacher of the law. Okay? And the correct teacher of the law is the Buddha. Yeah. Somebody that's truly the Buddha. Mm-hmm. Somebody that is the Buddha as defined by the Lotus Sutra as being the Buddha. Mm-hmm. Somebody corroborated as being the Buddha by the teachings of Nichiren as the Buddha. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. So this would be a correct teacher. This would be somebody that would teach you the truth. This would be somebody that would teach you the difference between not so correct and strict correctness. Okay? This would be somebody that could show you the nuances that are the Soka philosophy. What he's really talking about is himself. When our lives, when directly connect our lives to the correct teacher of the law and the true mentors of Kosen Rufu. Who are the true mentors of Kosen Rufu? What has he already qualified in the previous paragraph? Who are the true mentors of Kosen Rufu?
Nichiren.
Yes, of course. Nichiren is the true mentor of Kosen Rufu. We follow Nichiren's example to establish. But Nichiren's an individual that lived in the 13th century. Okay? Prior to that, after that 13th century advent, there was a lot of confusion that was created, correct?
Yes.
Who dissipated the confusion so that ordinary common people were freed to become Buddhas in their present form? Soka Gakkai, and specifically the practice prescribed by the Soka Gakkai. What makes the Soka Gakkai? It's not the name, the Soka Gakkai. It's not a bunch of community centers and so forth and activities. It's the correct teaching that allows the individual to assume the identity that the Soka Gakkai says is their true identity, which is the Buddha. This is not a teaching that's taught by anyone other than the Soka philosophy, the Soka Gakkai. Okay? Do you understand that? The other sects don't teach that teaching. All right? So that's why, I'll read it again. The true power for spreading the mystic law is born when all of us as practitioners directly connect. We become the votary of the Lotus Sutra. That's direct connection. Do you understand? We take the vow. We go into stage 5. It's not about starting to chant. That's not what he's talking about. Starting to chant doesn't do Kosen Rufu. Becoming a leader of Kosen Rufu, becoming the Buddha in your present form, creates Kosen Rufu. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Who taught us that way? Who served as that living example? Your grandmother. The people of that entire genre. Okay? So we have living, actual benefactors whose lives themselves are the gold that has been left behind in the absence of their temporary gathering of the 5 components. This is how we achieve immortality as common mortals, as temporary gatherings of the 5 components. Is the temporary gathering of the 5 components that was Nichiren Daishonin still composed? No, not as those temporary 5. Neither is everything, your grandmother, everything dissipates equally back into the universe, into the state of non-substantiality, right? It doesn't maintain its individual form.
Right.
All right? So, Mr. Toda's monumental vow to accomplish a membership of 750,000 households galvanized and reinvigorated the Soka Gakkai. Does anybody know what that's about? Now again, how many members were there that when he came out of prison? 3,000.
Oh, people. Okay.
Right, 3,000. That had been 3,000. There were only a handful, hundreds. Everybody had quit.
Yeah.
Okay, he comes out. This is 52. He's now made the determination. And this is the famous determination.
Yes.
Some people will say is fable, but I believe it. Because it's become part of my vow, which is if I don't accomplish this goal, he made this goal of 750,000 households before he died. He says, if we don't hit this, don't even have a funeral for me.
Yeah.
Just throw my ashes in the Tokyo River, because everything I said is it's not what I thought I was saying. Okay? So that's how much faith he had in this understanding of what his mission was and the selflessness with which he pursued it. In reading again, last week I said something, when did this president die? 58, and I said 56. It was 58. So he actually shortened his life by the level of how much he expended himself towards others in the process of trying to accomplish this goal. So he did not begrudge his life. Basically, again, President Toda lived the living example that Nichiren had already laid out with his life. The do not begrudge your life part, President Toda took very literally. And President Makaguchi had shown him how to take it so literally. We're going to prison, and I will never renounce my faith. Wow, I didn't know I was going to die when I went in. You think he thought he was going to die when he went in? No. But was there anything that would make him stop short of what he had taken his vow? No. Okay? That's what happened with President Toda. Don't forget, President Toda wasn't inspired in prison and attained Buddhahood because he heard President Makaguchi had died. He didn't find out President Makaguchi was dead until he left. Okay? So this whole revelation about human revolution and the bodhisattvas of the earth and his original identity and everything that drove him for what he created in post-war Japan as the Soka Gakkai, okay, in the absence of his mentor being alive, okay, was all created through the training, but individually. He didn't just take it as a PS to what President Makaguchi had been doing. Are you all with me?
Yep.
Yes. Everybody have any questions about this? Okay, so he says, Mr. Toda's monumental vow to accomplish a membership of 750,000 households galvanized and reinvigorated the Soka Gakkai. He came out of the war and says, we're going to go nuts. We're going to get so big, we're going to be bigger than anybody else. And so, of course, the people that are following him, that's what a leader does. A leader inspires. A leader creates the goal. A leader creates the picture for everybody else to strive toward. The leader is the one that says, you have no limitations, don't place them upon yourself. Okay? The leader teaches others how to lead. The leader is nothing more than someone that's been taught. Okay? Everybody that's a leader was once a follower. All followers follow for the purpose of becoming leaders. Understand that. We don't have followers for the purpose of followers. We have followers for the purpose of becoming Buddhas. All Buddhas are leaders. It's a huge difference between what we do and anything anybody else does. All of us owe him an immeasurable debt, which is true, which is why, for those that don't have the wisdom to know that, it's in your Gongyo book. It's for your protection. Okay? It's not to glorify him. It's for you to keep yourself from creating the slander of not having or showing any appreciation for this individual who committed himself to what has paid off for all of us as goal. As his young disciple, I rose to action with a single-minded wish to realize his cherished dream. The February campaign was the Soka Gakkai's first full-fledged effort to actively expand the Kosen Rufu movement. So this is really the first big campaign as a youth organization being led by this old guy, Josei Toda, because everybody else is in their 20s, right? For me, having up to then dedicated all my energies to supporting Mr. Toda during his business difficulties, It was also effectively the first Kosen Rufu campaign I led on the front lines of our organization at my mentor's direct behest. Everybody understands what he's saying there? Do you understand what he's saying there? He's saying after the war, I got shakabuku'd by going to a meeting when I was 19, and then he had this business, and I got all involved in helping him with the business, and the scattering of members were the old hangers-on members from the Makaguchi days. They weren't really part of the Shakabuku campaign of Japan. That's just now beginning here. Do you understand? All right, so he's saying, my sole thought was to make Mr. Toda's pledge to achieve a membership of 750,000 households a reality. I worked tirelessly, giving my all to actualize his vision. So what is he saying? When the leader leads, when the Buddha leads, the disciples arise and give rise to that, the effect that the mentor is leading them to. I worked tirelessly, giving my all to actualize his vision. Practicing as my mentor instructed also meant that I was acting in accord with the Buddhist teachings, thereby embodying the very essence of Buddhism. If we faithfully exert ourselves as the Buddha teaches, which is what Daisaku Ikeda is trying to teach us now, what he was taught by Josei Toda. If we faithfully exert ourselves as the Buddha teaches, we can break through any obstacle. Practicing in accord with the Buddhist teachings means disciples challenging themselves in the same spirit as their teacher or mentor. When we unerringly walk the path of mentor and disciple, we can bring forth unlimited power. The mentor's lofty and expansive life state can inspire us to win in our own struggle. Okay? I'll read that again. If we faithfully exert ourselves as the Buddha teaches, we can break through any obstacle. Practicing in accord with the Buddhist teachings means disciples challenging themselves in the same spirit as their teacher or mentor. So we should view President Makaguchi, we should view President Toda, we should view Daisaku Ikeda, we should view the reality of their struggles, okay, as we look for problem-free lives. We should understand the reality of the lessons that our mentors' lives have blazed for us, have absorbed pain, suffering, and had to do the grit of determination to see themselves through, to show you can make it too. Don't worry. Did I not warn you in advance? Right? So he says, when we have unerringly walked the path of mentor and disciple, when we have joined forces with that influence that they were leading us to, that they had joined forces with. All we are is becoming them just like them. Yes. They were not better than us. They were not different than us. We had a relationship with them for a reason, to become equal to them. Do you understand that? Yes. Not to be their children. All right? When we unerringly walk the path of mentor and disciple, we can bring forth unlimited power. We become the Buddha too. We become the Buddha ourselves. We become the teacher ourselves. We become the mentor. The mentor's lofty and expansive life state can inspire us to win in our own struggles. I learned from Mr. Toda the essence of faith and practice based on staunchly adhering to the Buddha's teachings. One particularly instructive time was when he resigned as general director in 1950, not wanting to let his business difficulties affect the Soka Gakkai. I alone stood by Mr. Toda, who I recognized was the one and only leader of our Kozen Rufu movement, and devoted myself tirelessly to supporting and assisting him in any way I could. In a journal entry dated November 17, 1950, I wrote, "Read on practicing the Buddha's teachings. Deeply realize the necessity of courageous faith." Courageous faith. In the end, our powers of faith and practice determine everything. The Gohonzon possesses the powers of the Buddha and the law. Only by our own faith can we prove, test, and acquire. How do we acquire? By proving and testing, by being living examples, by having our own difficulties that we're faced with. We must come up with we practice to win. Do you understand? That's how we're able to prove. It's not theoretical. Okay? And acquire the great power of the supreme law embodied in the Gohonzon. Okay? But realize here what he says, I alone stood by Mr. Toda, who I recognized was the one and true and only leader of the Kosen Rufu movement, and devoted myself tirelessly to supporting and assisting him in any way I could. Does anybody know what that's about? Mr. Toda's business had really run into some hard times, and it was not a savings alone, but like a savings and loan. It was one of those things where everybody puts their money in, and then
会啊，他们有会吗？
in Japan, what would you say?
台湾有会啊。You can you
Meetings?
no.
No, this was a savings. This was a teachers union kind of a thing. This was like a guild. This is like a, I don't know how to explain it, but the bottom line is that don't forget, when President Ikeda started practicing, there were people that had been practicing with President Makaguchi and President Toda that were still alive when President Toda came out of prison, right? They were much the senior of 19-year-old Daisaku Ikeda. Okay? And Daisaku Ikeda was not some sort of golden boy that walked in with a halo and said, hey, I know more than all of you. Follow me. No, there was already a hierarchical struggle. There was already a hierarchical structure, okay, of contemporaries of Mr. Makaguchi and Mr. Toda. Okay? Mr. Ikeda was a youth division member. Right? I mean, so what ended up happening is when President Toda had to resign, so to speak, step aside voluntarily from his responsibility as the Soka Gakkai president, as the second Soka Gakkai president, the reason he had to do that was because his business difficulties were so entwined with the memberships themselves that many members slandered him. They're going like, what the hell? Well, where's your benefit, dude? How could this shit have happened to you? You know, you must be kind of like not paying much attention here. And so President Ikeda supported President Toda completely, and in light of others that were saying, hey, maybe he doesn't have it all squared away. Okay, so it was really this 1952, it was all the youth division that picked up President Toda and carried him into this phase. Do you understand? There were many people that were jockeying for the power and the influence. President Ikeda talks about it in the New Human Revolution, and we read that. I read that to you specifically.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of people said that they were President Toda's friends and mentors. President Ikeda says, but I watched how they behaved around him. They were not truly his friends. They were not truly his disciples. Okay? That's left a big impression on him, on what he wants to explain to all of us to understand what it is he's trying to convey to us he wants us to be. He doesn't want us to be a bunch of kiss-ass cookie cutter, Daisaku Ikedites. He wants us to be Buddhas. He wants us to be true Buddhas. He wants us to utilize the philosophy that allows common mortals to become true Buddhists, to create Kosen Rufu for the sake of the law. Okay? So I'll continue to read. I'm so sorry. When we bring forth the powers of courageous faith and practice that accord with the Buddhist teachings, the infinite powers of the Buddha and the law will manifest without fail. To deepen our understanding of this essential Nichiren Buddhist teaching, let us continue studying on practicing the Buddhist teachings in this chapter, focusing on the way of faith and practice for advancing with the same spirit as our mentor, which is what I was just talking about. Okay, so now, the one vehicle on the second column of page 22, the one Buddha vehicle as the correct basis of faith. Do understand what he's saying here. This is very strict. From the Gosho itself. I insist that this is wrong. The Daishonin is saying the most important thing in practicing the Buddhist teachings is to follow and uphold the Buddha's golden words, not the opinion of others. Because he's really going down to following the Buddha's golden words means following what he says in the Immeasurable Meaning Sutra when he draws the line and declares everything else to have been an expedient and to discard it. Okay? Those are the golden words he's referring to. not the opinions of others. All these other secular priests, Honen and Jikaku and all those other dudes that didn't listen to the Buddha's golden words and uphold the Lotus Sutra as the supreme teaching. Do you understand? The Buddha himself concluded that one's practice accords with the Buddhist teachings only when one bases one's faith firmly on the standard for these sutra passages, believing fully that there is only the law of the one vehicle. Because why? In the Lotus Sutra, he has qualified, there is not the three vehicles. The three vehicles were inexpedient. There is only the one vehicle. He makes that as a declarative. He says, don't talk to me about the three vehicles. The three vehicles were inexpedient to bring you to a teaching level where I could show you the one vehicle. The three vehicles are nothing more than the one vehicle. Do you understand? There's not a distinction between the three vehicles and the one vehicle, other than to view them as three vehicles is delusion. To view them as one vehicle is Buddhahood. That's why it's 7, 8, 9, and the other one's 10 in terms of world number. You understand what I'm saying to you?
Yes.
Okay, so he's saying, just before this section, Nichiren Daishonin poses the question, how should one practice if one is to be faithful to the Buddhist teachings? He then explains the correct way of faith in the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law. The true intent of the Buddha Shakyamuni is revealed in the Lotus Sutra. His aim is to clarify that all vehicles are contained in the one Buddha vehicle, and that all people have the potential to attain enlightenment. All vehicles indicates the teachings other than the Lotus Sutra expounded by Shakyamuni in accord with the different capacities of the people. All the expedient means, those provisional teachings. They specifically refer to the three vehicles, respectively. But Shakyamuni's true purpose in expounding these teachings was to cultivate people's capacity so that he could ultimately teach them the one Buddha vehicle, the sole vehicle by which people can attain the state of Buddhahood. As such, it is the only teaching in the Buddha's vast body of sutras that can lead all humanity to enlightenment in the latter day. And it is fully and clearly revealed by Shakyamuni in the Lotus Sutra. Okay? So does everybody remember last week what President Ikeda had said in that first opening section? The Buddha, after attaining Buddhahood, what was his first desire? It was to preach the truth.
Yes.
But his wisdom was that nobody will understand. I have to help them get there. Then he goes out with the Kegon Sutra, the Flower Garland Sutra. Oh, shit, I got to go all the way back to Agamas. I got to do A, B, C with everybody. That's what he's talking about. So what was his true purpose in Advent? Shakyamuni's. It was ultimately to teach this thing that he realized nobody had the capacity to understand, to get somebody the capacity to the level that they could understand by the end of his life. How long did he preach to be able to accomplish that?
42 years.
42 years before he could even begin. Yeah. Okay? So, he's saying then, the Lotus Sutra not only discloses the Buddha's true intent of helping all people attain Buddhahood, because it contains Nam-myoho Renge-kyo surreptitiously for the latter day of the law, but it also reveals the name of the great law that is the key to enlightenment, Myoho Renge-kyo, the wonderful law, right? But it's that wonderful law, the Myoho Renge-kyo, when he says that, he calls that Shakyamuni. Is that Shakyamuni's law? Is Myoho Renge-kyo anything that Shakyamuni ever said in his wildest dreams in truth and reality? No. He spoke a different language. Myoho Renge-kyo is classical Chinese, which Shakyamuni never saw, translated and pronounced in Japanese. Kanji. Okay? So do understand. We call this law Shakyamuni because he said it first. It's all Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. It's the time. It's the time and the influence of the karma of the people that make and create the separation. It's the same law, but how it's known and how it's propagated, understood, and who gets to realize it changes based on the karma of the people inhabiting. It's the time. Okay, Myoho Rengekyo, the wonderful law, or the mystic law. It also expounds the principle of the true aspect of all phenomena, which is what? The singular aspect that is all things. What is that? It refers to the true aspect of all phenomena. It says, hey, the true aspect of all phenomena can only be understood and shared between Buddhas. True, that aspect consists of the 10 factors, right? It's Nam Myoho Renge-kyo, right?
Right. Yes.
You all understand that. So, it also expounds the principle of the true aspect of phenomena, which serves as the theoretical basis for the universal attainment of Buddhahood. That's how we describe it in the second chapter, right? The expedient means chapter of the Lotus Sutra. The theoretical Ichinen Sanzen, right? That's theoretical Ichinen Sanzen. In addition, it illuminates the ultimate causality at work in Shakyamuni's fundamental enlightenment in the remote past in terms of the doctrine of true cause and true effect. It also enumerates the countless benefits of practicing the Lotus Sutra, including the blessings to be gained through one instance of belief and understanding in the Lotus Sutra, the purification of the 6 sense organs, the eradications of one's offenses, and the attainment of Buddhahood in one's present form. Okay? I'm going to reread that and go through it. Did everybody understand what it said? You did? I don't have to reread it. You all understand what all those things pertain to? You do? For the folks that don't, that might be watching, let me go through it again. Talking about the Lotus Sutra. So the Lotus Sutra not only discloses the Buddha's true intent, okay, but also reveals the name of the great law, Myoho Renge-kyo, okay? And it also establishes the principle of the true aspect of all phenomena, okay, which is the foundational theoretical framework that Buddhism grew onto with Nagarjuna, with Tiantai, with Myolo, with Dingyo. So this whole progressive thought that was the foundation for Nichiren to start with is all started in this process, right? In addition to those things, it illuminates the ultimate causality at work in Shakyamuni's fundamental enlightenment in the remote past in terms of the doctrine of true cause and true effect. In other words, it's the reason, it explains why Shakyamuni says, hey, it's been numberless major, if you want to know how long ago I attained Buddhahood, it's Sanzen Jintingo. If you want to know how long the law, it's numberless major world system, dust particle kalpas, right? So it also enumerates all that. It also enumerates the countless benefits of practicing the Lotus Sutra. We go through those 28 chapters. They're filled with examples of Buddha's burning torch, yada, 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 right? It gives us A to Z that we need to know about being Buddhas in the world, correct? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. It then qualifies in all that teaching the blessings to be gained through that, right? That's part of the Lotus Sutra. And the benefit of one instance of belief and understanding. Everybody's with me? Yeah. All those parables and the purification of the 6 sense organs, what that really means from the provisional teachings. What's it say in the Lotus Sutra, as defined by Nichiren in the orally transmitted teachings? All 6 sense says everything's clean and pure. We purify our 6 sense organs through the process of faith and practice, right? Yes. That's what the Lotus Sutra says. We don't have to go into some weird shit that the provisional teachings talk about, going through all kinds of weird shit to take care of eyes, take care of nose, take care of mouth, take care of hearing, right? Do you understand? Yes. All right. So we acquired the 32 features naturally and instantaneously of the Buddha. We become the Buddha without changing the Buddha in our present form. Attainment of Buddhahood in one's present form, right? Right. When we're the Buddha, we possess the 32 features, right? Yeah. Okay. So, the Lotus Sutra also elucidates the great vow of Kosen Rufu. This is very important, right? Because this is the segue between Bodhisattva and Buddha. Do you understand? Also elucidates the great vow of Kosen Rufu, the vow to widely spread the correct teaching to enable all living beings to attain Buddhahood. It asserts that devoting one's life to this great vow or aspiration is the true and eternal Bodhisattva way. The true and eternal Bodhisattva way leads to the true and eternal life condition of Buddhahood. Do you understand? So they cannot be separated. They're all the same thing. They're aspects of the same thing. The Lotus Sutra thus teaches from a variety of angles that the one vehicle of Buddhahood represents the Buddha's true intent. And what's the one vehicle of Buddhahood? All people are Buddhas. All people come to that realization. In fact, it showcases this supreme teaching from beginning to end. Further, the sutra describes how those who hear and embrace the Lotus Sutra arouse faith in the one vehicle of Buddhahood and cast off the delusion that prevents them from attaining enlightenment. What is he talking about there? Read that sentence again. You'll know what I'm saying. Further, the sutra... And the reason I'm asking these questions is I'm not trying to trick you. I'm trying to get you to think broadly of what I already know you already know. I want you to be able to know what you know and incorporate it into what you're reading rather than keeping them compartmentalized. What is he talking about there? In fact, it showcases the supreme teaching from beginning to end. Further, the sutra describes how those who hear and embrace the Lotus Sutra arouse faith in the one vehicle of Buddhahood and cast off the delusion that prevents them from attaining enlightenment. The causality of attaining Buddhahood is thus engraved in their lives, enabling them to manifest the supreme benefit of enlightenment in this lifetime. The Lotus Sutra is the sole sutra that not only provides a concrete teaching, but also explains how it should be practiced and the benefit that will ensue from such a practice. What's he talking about there? Let me go through it.
How you receive is all your karma?
Huh?
How you receive is all your karma.
Always, everything, that's the answer. That's the correct answer to everything. But what he's really talking about is the 6 stages of practice. Going from being a Buddha in theory, hearing the name and the words of the truth. Once you've done that, you opened a door that can never be closed again. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. So let's read it through, thinking about it from hearing the name and the words of the truth. The first time you hear Nam Myoho Renge Kyo and begin. Okay? So he's saying the Lotus Sutra is the sole sutra, because he's qualifying that as the source of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, right? Do you understand? But it's the latter day of the law now. That not only provides a concrete teaching, the teaching that we practice and learn, Nichiren's Buddhism of the sowing, okay? But also explains how it should be practiced based on our mentor, the original mentor, the Daishonin, what we're doing right now, and also the benefit that will ensue from such a practice. But again, this is all about that process being initiated through hearing the name and the words of the truth. It's the latter day of the law, right? It is also imperative, therefore, that those who would practice the Lotus Sutra in accord with the Buddha's teachings embrace faith solely in that sutra. If they fail to comprehend the Buddha's true intent and place greater importance on earlier teachings, which the Buddha expounded as expedient means, it could cause them to veer from the path of faith in the one vehicle of Buddhahood. In other words, don't keep doing Nimbutsu, don't keep doing Zen, don't keep doing anything other than chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo with a seeking spirit. All right? Many Buddhist scholars in Japan of Nichiren's day misunderstood the concept that all vehicles are contained in the one Buddha vehicle and persisted in advocating erroneous views of faith. On practicing the Buddhist teachings, the Daishonin summarizes their misguided stance as follows. Since all vehicles are opened up and incorporated in the one vehicle of Buddhahood, no teaching is superior or inferior, shallow or profound, but all are equal to the Lotus Sutra. Hence, the belief that chanting the Nimbutsu, embracing the true word teachings, practicing Zen meditation, or professing and reciting any sutra or the name of any Buddha or Bodhisattva equals following the Lotus Sutra. That's from the Daishonin's Gosho. This points to a grave misapprehension of the concept of opened up and incorporated. Its true meaning, which I know you all know, because this is where we get into the perfect teaching is contained in the provisional teachings, but is only from the perspective of the Buddhism of the sowing that you can perceive correctly the perfect teaching as it's contained in the Tripitaka, the connecting and the specific teaching. Okay? Do you understand? That's what he's talking about. This points to a grave misapprehension of the concept opened up and incorporated. Its true meaning is to clarify the ultimate truth and integrate the various expedient teachings in relation to that truth. So it's understanding the provisional teachings in relationship to Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and the Gohonzon and the Buddhism of the sowing. Then you can see the truth in those teachings. Okay? That's valid. Do you understand? In the absence, the truth that they teach is abstract and incorrect. In light of the perfect teaching, there are constructive lessons to be gleaned from them. That's why Nichiren refers to other sutras than just the Lotus Sutra. Always, though, the thing that he's referring to is the perfect teaching within that provisional teaching. The ultimate truth, or the one Buddha vehicle that integrates these various teachings is revealed in the Lotus Sutra alone. In other words, the expedient teachings are simply a means by which to spread the ultimate truth expounded in the Lotus Sutra. Do you understand? It thus follows that while the expedient teachings are opened up and incorporated in the one Buddha vehicle, they can only be considered teachings that express a partial aspect of the truth expounded within them. You understand? Because they're primarily either the Tripitaka or the connecting or the specific. The perfect is the last teaching and parts of those other preceding teachings. The value of the various expedient teachings only comes to life when viewed based on the Lotus Sutra teaching of the one Buddha vehicle. Ignorant of the Lotus Sutra's true significance, the priests of the established Buddhist schools of Nichiren's day espoused incorrect ways of faith. But in the Lotus Sutra, Shakyamuni himself elucidates the correct way of faith. Accordingly, in this section on practicing the Buddha's teachings, seeking to help people realize their error and establish correct faith, Nichiren says that in practicing Buddha's teachings, we should uphold the Buddha's golden words, not the opinions of others. To illustrate, he cites several passages of the Buddha's golden words from the Immeasurable Meaning Sutra and the Lotus Sutra. First, from the Immeasurable Meaning Sutra, which serves as an introduction to the Lotus Sutra, which we've all read, is a passage indicating that one should clearly distinguish between the provisional teachings, expedient means, and the true teaching, the truth. You know how they notice the truth. Preaching the law in various different ways, I made use of the power of expedient means, but in these more than 40 years I have not yet revealed the truth. That's from the Immeasurable Meaning Sutra. Second is a passage asserting that one can never hope to attain Buddhahood through the earlier provisional teachings that call for countless kalpas of practice. And that comes, I think, from either peaceful practices or encouraging devotion. I think it's one of those two. One will in the end. No, it comes from earlier. I think it comes from earlier on in the teaching when certain people grasp the Lotus Sutras. There are certain people that get it as he starts preaching the Lotus Sutra, right? There's one, oh yeah, they get it, and then finally these other guys get it, then finally these other guys get it, then, okay, so he says, from the Lotus Sutra, meanwhile, various passages indicate how Shakyamuni himself discards the expedient means and preaches the true teaching of the one vehicle of Buddhahood. The world-honored one has long expounded his doctrines and now must reveal the truth. That's from the Lotus Sutra. In the Buddha lands of the 10 directions, there is only the law of the one vehicle. There are not two, there are not three, except when the Buddha preaches so as an expedient means, also from the Lotus Sutra. And then also in the Lotus Sutra he says, honestly discarding expedient means. Also cited is a passage emphasizing that practitioners of the correct teaching of Buddhism should believe solely in the Lotus Sutra. Pardon me. And this is very key, because again, this is all about pure faith, and that's what's necessary. Not accepting a single verse of the other sutras. Now, if you're a Western person like me, and you never had any exposure to Buddhism prior to this, it's real easy, because I don't know anything to be swayed by. But in this culture and society, there are many people that will be a tremendous obstacle to, because they'll want to start practicing, but hang on to the parts that they think are still true. You've talked to me about friends. I've already heard local SGI discussions that are including things from Nichiren Shu kind of belief, where you have a lot of the provisional teachings of Shakyamuni actually intermixed in the thought process. Is not, we're all Buddhas exactly as we are. Okay, so that's what he's talking about. There is also a passage warning against slander of the Lotus Sutra. If a person fails to have faith but instead slanders this sutra, immediately he will destroy all the seeds for becoming a Buddha in any world. When his life comes to an end, he will enter the Avicii hell. And finally, citing the passage, there is only the law of the one vehicle. Nichiren observes that those who uphold this firm conviction and faith are truly practicing as the Buddha teaches. So the point is that this level of strictness is not just indicated as a good thing, but it's absolutely necessary. In any dilution, even any adding of this tainting, of this adulteration, will affect the result. You won't get there. So he's saying very clearly, the only way you can attain Buddhahood in your present form, because he's just qualified all these beautiful things that the Lotus Sutra does, but he's now just said in that same paragraph that you can't get any of it if you adhere or follow anything but the teaching of the Buddhism of the sowing, because you're not even doing the Lotus Sutra now, right? Now we're doing the latter day of the law. We're not teaching people to go burn their arms for eons and attain Buddhahood that way. That isn't what we say. We even say that's an expedient means.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay? So understand that. It is important to note here, however, that these quotes should not be and this is so beautiful and important to understand. It is important to note here. Now, what did I just say to you? What was my point in what I just made comment about? My comment was about the strictness of what this is. Okay? Now, but what he's going to do is he's going to show compassion. Okay? And how you convey that strictness. You don't convey that strictness in a way that puts people off. You convey it in a way to draw them in. Our goal is Kosen Rufu, not an exclusive club where only those of us that were smart and strong enough get to be members. Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay, so he's saying it is important to note here, however, that these quotes should not be misinterpreted. Even though I just said this is so strict, you should not misinterpret them to indicate intolerance. Okay? Nichiren was simply committed to abiding by the Buddha's intent and therefore called on his followers to establish faith in the one vehicle of Buddhahood. So how do we take care of this strictness? By being living examples. Not by insisting that everybody suffer like we do. Be perfect like we do. That's a provisional, that's precepts. That's bullshit. That's like compare myself to you. There's no way for you to compare yourself to me or to anybody else. We're all completely unique. Okay? Completely unique. So, what he's saying is that even though this is so strict, don't go around saying, for the sake of embellishing your own position as being better. That's what he's talking about. He's talking about this not to indicate intolerance. Okay? Wisdom includes compassion.
Right.
Compassion has no disregard for what somebody's level is. It embraces it. Read the Gosho. How many different levels of profundity is the Gosho written on? An infinite variety. Because there's an infinite variety of recipients. Okay? And the goal each time is nothing more than to inspire their faith to continue. They'll get there as long as their faith continues to inspire them to continue. He says, therefore, the latter day is described as an age of quarrels and disputes when the pure law becomes obscured and lost. At the bottom of the first column of page 25. In other words, it is a time when people have grown ignorant of the Buddha's true teaching of the one vehicle of Buddhahood. When the standard for integrating all Buddhist teachings into an organic whole has been lost, and when conflict among different Buddhist schools prevails, it is an age in which the future of Buddhism itself is imperiled. Okay? Which is now, too. Okay? Which is why he's writing this. Because this is an age where Buddhism can become imperiled, because we've separated from the priesthood. We're now a secular organization. We have to walk the walk and not only talk the talk, but walk the walk. We have to be the living examples. We can't fall back on priests and shiny altars and temples and validate our truth in that way. We have to be Buddhists. The only way to validate our truth. Okay? So he's saying, the schism in Japanese Buddhism during Nichiren's time is characterized by the reference to the 8 or 10 schools highlighted the danger of the law's decline as a result of people losing sight of the one Buddha vehicle, getting screwed all the way over into misconceptions. And again, the correct practice in accord with the Buddhist teachings, which is what we do as bodhisattvas of the earth, fighting for Kosen Rufu, as members of the Soka Gakkai. Do understand that. Do understand that Nichiren Shoshu doesn't do this. What I'm talking about here, what he's describing here. Nobody else does this. Okay? And very few people in the Soka Gakkai do this. Do understand that. I'll say it straight to the camera. Very few people practice this way. Very few people understand what President Ikeda is teaching. That's why he's teaching it. All right? So he's saying, the schism in Japanese Buddhism during Nichiren's time is characterized by the reference to the 8 or 10 schools, highlighted the danger of the law's decline as a result of people losing sight of the one Buddha vehicle. I am the Buddha. To overcome this danger, Nichiren called on people to embrace faith in the Lotus Sutra, the only sutra that fully expounds the supreme sanctity of life and respect for all people in both principle and practice, thereby opening the way to universal enlightenment for everybody to be the Buddha. The decline of the law also directly threatened the people's happiness and welfare. It could lead to conditions that would bring about conflict and war, for instance. The calamities of internal strife and foreign invasion that the Daishonin predicted would occur, thus destroying the peace and tranquility of the land and society. If you truly, his quote in one of the Gostas is, if you truly cherish peace and security, should you not pray for the four quarters of the sovereign? In other words, how safe can you be if your country isn't safe? Do you remember that was his view? Mm-hmm. That's why the whole thing about the sovereign is a part of what we should be, aware of. To overcome this danger, the mission of Nichiren's disciples, awakened to the Lotus Sutra's true teaching, is to foster active, self-motivated individuals possessing steadfast faith in the one Buddha vehicle. So, it's 9 o'clock. I'll stop there, but let's emphasize this last paragraph before I do stop. What did he just say there? To overcome this danger of the true teaching being lost. How could the true teaching be lost?
Obscure.
No one's practicing it. It's theoretical.
Right.
Okay? There's no one that really knows what it is. There's only people that can talk about it. That's what he's saying. That's when Buddhism is lost. When there are no true practitioners, when there are no true Buddhas. A true practitioner is, by virtue of definition, a true Buddha. Do understand that. Whether they recognize it or not, they've already gone past stage 2. Right? So, he's saying to overcome this danger of the true teaching being lost, the mission of Nichiren's disciples, who happen to be awakened to the Lotus Sutra's true teaching, the teaching of how to practice according to the teachings, to foster active, self-motivated individuals. What is he doing? He's writing this book to reach us in order to foster us into becoming active, self-motivated individuals possessing steadfast faith, unwavering faith that we are the Buddha in the one Buddha vehicle. Do you understand? You're on that path. That's what we're supposed to be doing. all of us. Okay? So, all right, we'll start out on page, I'm sorry that we didn't get that far, but we did. Actually, page 25, the bottom, next time, finish chapter 2. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank